Hey y'all, Fat Man Outdoors. I promise I'm gonna get you a video on the water fishing. Guys, we have had situation after situation. We knew we were gonna have to deal with some issues, some doctor's appointments that had to be dealt with. We got those done finally. Just got back from a trip to Louisville with my wife to the surgeon up there. Probably have another one of those in a couple of months. They still got to set up the appointment to do the procedure, but we got the initial consultation and everything took care of yesterday. I wanted to go fishing today. We had a bunch of big storms go through last night, strong storms, a lot of rain, a lot of wind. Well, the rain, that's all gone. Sunny, real nice, about 70, 75 degrees right around in there. But the wind stayed with us. It's probably sustained wind, 15 miles an hour gust to 25 or 30. I just didn't want to try to get out there today on a Saturday and try that because I knew there was going to be 9,000 bass boats out there, and on top of fighting them and trying to fight wind to control the boat, it was just going to be impossible. So my plan is, fingers crossed, my plan is Monday that I'm going to be on the water to do a catfish video in the morning. So hopefully that'll work out. I'm finalizing getting everything loaded up in the boat now, so because I've kind of set this as a do or die trip. Either I'm going or I'm not. So got to get it fixed. Got to get everything's done on the boat. I started the motor up a while ago, make sure it was still running good, and it is. I've got most everything loaded in. I'm just going to finalize getting some new rigs tied because they're from last year and I don't want to reuse them. I'm going to tie everything up fresh. But I wanted to share a few things with you today about the rigs that I use. Okay, now I'm going to be fishing primarily with 3 different kinds of rigs, depending on the situation. I'll either be fishing on a suspended rig, which is just the oldest way to fish in the world. You put a hook on the end of the line. Above that somewhere you put something to sink the line in the water, and you put your bait on it, drop it straight down, and let it hang there a couple feet off the bottom. That's a pretty simple setup. I think everybody knows how to do that even from when I was a kid fishing for bluegill or sunfish days. The other one is dragon rigs. Now, I'll use dragon rigs sometimes in 2 different situations. It's the exact same rig, the only difference is whether or not the boat's moving. Okay, if I'm anchored up or I'm on spot lock, if I've got some current or everything's going right and I can just hit spot lock and the boat will stay straight to where I can cast out, I'll use a rig like this. It's like a sort of kind of a modified Santee Cooper rig. Okay, it's just a nice big hook, 11/0 offset circle hook, and about 4 or 5 inches up the line from that is a peg float. It's pegged on both ends. You just run your line through there and push in the little plastic pegs. It's movable. After that, you can slide it down the line if you want to get it closer to the hook, or slide it back further. I like to keep it about 4 or 5 inches away from the hook. Then about a foot or so up the line from the bobber, from the float, I've got a big old barrel swivel, 75 pound test barrel swivel, and I'll make up a few of these, a few of those whole rigs, and have them made up and ready. And that way, if I get hung up and I have to break one off or hit something, and it gets abrased in that 50-pound leader, and all this is made with 50-pound mono, by the way, then I can just snip it off, tie one back on with the improved clinch knot back to my main line, put bait back on, and I'm back fishing. I don't got to spend 45 minutes tying up a rig out on the water. And I've got free time when I'm out here right now and the wind's blowing 40 miles an hour and I can't fish. So that's the things that I can do that are fishing related to help my fishing be a little bit easier when I get out on the water. Now, the Santee Cooper rig, like I said, I can use it in 2 different ways. What the Santee Cooper rig will do is just above this swivel, there'll be a weight, okay, depending on if you're drifting or if you're sitting still, on what kind of weight you're going to use. Now, if you're sitting still, you'll have something, just you can put a flat on it, you can put different weights with attachments, and you can use a sinker slider to put it on there, and it makes it real easy if you use like the donut sinkers that's got a little ring on them. so that you can snap them on and off. And if you're moving, then you can use these big drifting weights. Now, it's got the same amount of weight as one of these 4-ounce weights here, except it's a lot harder to get this hung up because it'll snake over stuff when you hit it. Okay, I'll show you kind of how this works. Okay, so we'll imagine that this is attached to your main line, this swivel. All right, and you'll put your sinker slide on that, and then the sinker slide will just sit right here on top of the swivel. Okay, and it can move up and down your line. Then but if you're going to be setting still, then instead of using one of those, you can just use a snap, just like we had. You can snap that drifting weight off, snap this donut sinker, or if you got no roll sinkers, got attachments, whatever, you can just snap it right back on to that sinker slider, and you can throw out. And like I said, if it's a situation where you can hold the boat, that there's current, or you got a little bit of wind, or something to that effect, that you're going to be fishing on the bottom, but you don't want to fish straight under the boat, so you want to throw out and get a spread on your baits. You can use this same rig, and that float will hold your bait just a little bit up off the bottom, so it's kind of getting a better scent trail into the water, and it's less chance of you getting hung up. But like I said, then you can take that same rig and just swap out the sinkers and just put the drifting weight on there. And if you put the drifting weight on there, then you can put your trolling motor down and drag at whatever speed you like to drag and cover water fast. You can cover a lot of water doing it that way. But that's the second rig that I'll use. So we got the rig where I'll fish suspended, which, like you said, it's just a basic. All it is a hook and a sinker. Okay, it's the old school. Then you got this other rig where it's like a modified Santee Cooper rig that you can drag or fish on the bottom with. Okay, then my third rig, fishing under float. Okay, now it's got a slip float on it that I made, and it's got a bead above it. Down this line of distance, on this one it's set about 10 feet deep, there's a bobber stopper. And what it is, when it comes up and you throw this out, this sinker pulls this underwater, and as this floating bead goes up, it goes up till it gets to that stop. And when it hits to that stop, it won't go any farther. And you'll fish at that same depth, just floating around out there. And what I like to do with this rig is, if I'm drifting, I'll use this rig. If I'm in water that's, moderate, not 40, 50 foot deep. If it's 25 or 30 foot deep water or under that, and I'm drifting, I'll adjust that rig. I'll slide my bobber stopper up and down, and this is what I'll show you. These right here, kind of small, so you can see. You can buy these little things right here, and see that little eye on the line. Sorry about my dirty hands, guys. I've been moving stuff around in here. See a little eye right there in the line? Well, you stick your fishing line through that, and then you slide this off the eye over your fishing line. Then after that, as long as you wet that line, you can drop it in the water, use a little saliva, whatever, and slide it up to where you want it, and just leave it. Okay, and it's rounded on each end, and they're pretty small. So on most rods you're going to use for catfish, it'll carry through there no problem on a good cast. And then what I'll do is, when I'm drifting, I'll throw a float out, and I'll feed it a lot of line, let it get way behind where my planer boards are. Okay, so that way I use that pretty much exclusively on braided line for a reason. Braided line floats. So when we're drifting along, I don't have to worry about that braided line sinking down, and then if I get a fish on one of the planer boards, or even on a suspended rod, if I've got one hanging out the back of the boat while we're going, getting tangled up in that line that the float's on. Because the more bait you get in the water and the more spread you get, in simple mathematics, it's going to improve your chance to catch fish. But the problem with that is, if you got too many lines in too close proximity to each other, and you get a lively fish, especially a blue cat. Some of them tend to go just crazy and want to run all over the place, and they seem to be mythically smart about finding your other lines if you get a good one on. And so that float being out there, but the line on top of the water, that knocks way back the possibility that fish is going to get in your line, and you have a better chance of getting him to the boat and getting him in the net. But it's pretty simple to fix one of these up. All right, guys, I've got an 11/0 circle hook here, like the one I just showed you a minute ago, and I've just got a strand of 50-pound monofilament Omni. That's what I always use. Okay, so now I'm going to show you how I snell a hook. This is just the way I do it. There may be a different way to do it. I don't know. There may be a better way to do it. I don't know that either. This is the one I know, so it's the one I tie. What I do is I take the line, I go in from the point side of the hook through the eye, just like that. Okay, now I'm going to make a loop just like this. Okay, just like that, and I'm going to hold it. Now each time I'm going to go through that loop and around the hook with the line, but each time I do, I'm going to let it go up under my thumb, so I'm holding on to it. Go through the loop like that, around, under your thumb, through the loop, under your thumb, through the loop, under your thumb. Now I'm going to hold all this with my other thumb now. See how I got that? I'm going to pull the main line. Just leave your tag line right where it's at and just pull the main line. And once you pull that main line, snug it down good, and you take a look at that. That is a very clean snell knot. Very, very clean, very tidy. Now, I'm going to trim off the excess. Get my little knife here. Okay, trimmed off the excess. Man, those sharp points on that hook. Now, I'm going to show you something about the reason why you go through the point side of the eye first. It gives this hook the trigger effect. Okay, so now if this hook comes up against pressure, it'll always pop back toward itself. It'll always pop back toward itself. All right, and what that does is it causes it to hang more straight in line with the hook, with the line. I mean, the point does. The point stays in line with the line itself. So then if it drags over something, see how that hook turned? It'll do it every time. Every single time you do that, and that hook will turn and it'll get in there. You can't make it miss. It'll do it every single time. It'll roll right up. Every single time, it'll roll right up. See there? But now that's a real simple and easy way to tie a snell hook. All right, now I'm going to show you how I tie a swivel to go on the line for these rigs. I do it the same on all of them. I do to tie the swivel to the leader side of the line. It just depends on what strikes me that day. Some days I'll tie a polymer knot. Some days I'll tie a clinch knot. As long as you get a good knot and you lubricate it well before you put it together so you don't overstress the line when it goes together, I don't really think it's going to matter. On this one, so I'm tying it to go on for a float rig. I'm going to use a polymer knot. Okay, you just make a loop, just like that. Just make a loop in your line. Now this heavier line is 50-pound test line. You don't really got to do a whole lot of squeezing it together to go through the eye on one of those swivels, because that eye is pretty big. Then you're going to tie, let my line come through. I'm going to tie an overhand knot, all right, just like that. Just tie one single overhand knot, all right, and you're going to run the swivel back through that loop of that single overhand knot, all right, and then you're going to pull everything down tight. Get it all pulled down there good and tight. Oh, yeah, get it all good and pulled down tight. Now that's not going to go nowhere. Now we'll take our scissor. Okay, now we're also going to use one of these little bobber stops that I showed you earlier. Okay, now guys, I bought these things off of Amazon for, I believe it was $11 for 1,200 of them. I won't use 1,200 of those in my lifetime, and I like to fish a lot. So you could buy 1,200. You could buy one order of these and spare them out to your buddies. You know, charge them, I don't know, a quarter, 50 cents, something like that, for one of these little bundles. And one of these little bundles here come with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Looks like 6 on a little bundle. And these things, I don't know if there's any way you can really mess them up. They just slide on, just like that. And then as long as that line has got any kind of lubrication, they'll slide wherever you want them to go. You know, I mean, you can slide them up, slide them down, however you want to go. See there? And you can slide them wherever you, and they slide really well on this braided line. Just what I do is, however deep I think I'm going to go, I let the line go out of the boat into the water so it gets wet, and then they'll slide like a dream up and down that. And then they cast good. They'll go out at even small eyes. They'll cast pretty good because they're rounded, they're conical on both ends. And if you're not going to be using it, you don't really have to worry about it. Just if you take your float off because you're going to use your reel for something else, after you take your float off and you tie up to whatever you're going to be using, either pull out enough line to where you get the bobber stop where you can reel it all the way up in your reel and it just be out of your way up the line. Or to me, it's better, a little bit less wear and tear and stress on the stop, is just pull it down to where it'll be close to whatever you're fishing with. You know, whether it be a artificial lure down close to your swivel or whatever, it's just going to be a little black dot hanging there. It's not going to do anything to affect your fishing. All right, so now what we're going to do is we're going to take a little snip of that 50-pound mono that I just had. Okay, we're going to run it up through there, and we're going to run it back through there, just like we did on that bobber stop a minute ago. All right, and then we're going to run our braid line, put it through that loop, pull some of it out, and there you go. Now your bead is on the braided line. See how it goes to that bobber stop? And it stops. All right, now, next process. All right, now after you got your bead on, take your piece of monofilament, go through your bobber, go through your float. Same things we did with the bead. Stick your main line through that loop. Pull you a little bit of it through there. Hold on to it. Pull the monofilament till it pulls all the way through, and your main line is now through. And you can move that out of your way. Now, you've got your float, you got your bead, and you got your bobber stop. Okay, now a weight. Okay, now this weight's what's going to activate the whole system. Once it hits the water, it's going to pull your bait down to the depth you got it set to. We got to run the weight. We got to run this line through that weight as well. Very important next step. Don't forget this next step, because if you do, you're going to dread it, because it's going to cause you a headache, I promise. Now what we're going to do is I'm going to put another bead. Now the reason we're putting another bead is because the bead is going to protect the knot into your swivel. Okay, so now we've got our bobber stopper, we've got our bead, we've got our float, we got our weight, and we got our knot protecting bead. All right, now we're going to get us a big old 75-pound test, open-ended barrel swivel. Okay, now I like these because they'll take some abuse and they are strong. Now I just tied that swivel on with a normal Palomar knot. All right, now I'm going to take the tag in. I'm going to tie 2 hard knots above that. So now I'll take my knife and I'll trim that off. All right. And now, oh yeah, now we've got the whole system. Got our bobber stop, got our bead for the bobber stop, got our float, got our weight, and we got our swivel. Now, okay, there we got a short piece of line going to that lovely snail knot. Now, what I'm going to do with this 50-pound mono going into the swivel, I'm going to tie a clinch knot with this at this end. You can tie whatever kind of knot you like. You know, a Palomar knot will work here too. You can even just do a loop knot with this 50-pound test. It takes a whole lot to do something wrong as far as knot wise, because this stuff, it's pretty stout. And then I'll go right back through the loop. Okay. And I get everything lined up and ready to be pulled. Now that's as far as I'm taking this until it's lubricated. Okay. That's the whole thing about monofilament knots, is you got to get them lubricated. So I'm going to give them a little of what God gave me. All I need to do now is take my little knife. I'm going to trim that tag end up. Just probably leave 1/4 of an inch or something sticking out. It don't need much. Now, we got the whole rig, and it didn't take, if I was just doing it and not trying to explain what I was doing, it wouldn't have took 3 minutes to tie it. So we got bobber stop shaking so people can see you, the bead, the float, which goes up and down, the sinker, the knot protecting bead, big old 75-pound barrel swivel, and a gorgeous tied snail knot on an 11/0 Team Catfish circle hook, and you are ready. So there's, guys, is the 3 main rigs that I use. There may be some people that use other rigs. One of them, like I said, is that I call it kind of a modified Santee Cooper rig. It's got the snail to hook, peg float, and the big weight, or the big swivel, and it's tied to a main line, and it's with a sinker slide on it that's got either a drifting weight or a bottom weight on it. And you can fish this rig both ways, on the bottom, slightly suspended off the bottom, or dragging and slightly suspended off the bottom. You can even take that float off. I've seen people do it and just let the bait go behind the rig, just kind of fluttering, you know, doing its own thing in the current as you're dragging it, or just laying on the bottom if you're in a place where you're fishing on the bottom and there's a little bit of current, it'll just kind of flutter and stuff. A lot of times fillet type baits off the back end of a skipjack, they work real good for doing that, especially if the bite's hard. And then you got, like I said, you got the float rig, which is a whole lot of stuff going on to accomplish a very simple thing. But anyway, guys, I appreciate y'all watching. I hope this was a little bit informative to you, and I appreciate all of y'all that have subscribed and that watch the videos. I noticed that my subscriber count's going up slowly, but it's going up, and I appreciate that. If y'all know people that enjoy stuff doing outdoors, I swear it's going to get more informative as it goes along. Now the weather's finally starting breaking. It's going to be warm enough and suitable weather to getting out and doing stuff. I'm going to show a lot more gun videos. I'm going to show a lot more fishing videos. I'm going to show a whole lot more shooting videos. And I've got some pretty unique firearms that I'm going to use in some pretty interesting ways. Y'all have seen the Turkey Terminator 2000. That's going to be awesome. And that's coming up here in about another 20 days or so. That's going to start. So we're looking forward to making a bunch more content and getting it out so everybody will have something interesting and funny to watch and interesting learning stuff. Maybe if nothing else, you get to see a fat guy do stupid things, you know. But I enjoy doing this stuff. It's given me a little bit of incentive and to touch base on my health, because that's, if you've read the description of the page, it's part of that too. My health, I'm really working on that. I've got an exercise regimen going, and one of the main things in my health regimen that's helping me more than anything is when I'm watching TV, every time commercials come on, for the entire run of those commercials till the show comes back on, or whatever I'm watching, videos on YouTube or whatever, I do stomach crunches just over and over and over and over. And it's beginning to build my core strength back. And I got that little tidbit from a guy that I met in a hospital that he had lost about 250 pounds, and he said that's where he started. But anyway, guys, I appreciate y'all, and I appreciate you watching the videos. So just be on the lookout for more content, Some fun stuff's coming. I'm the Fat Man, and I'm gone. Hey guys, if you liked the video, hit subscribe. Don't forget to click that bell so you get notifications the next time we put out a video. Appreciate you. It's the Fat Man. I'm gone.